The message came while I was still in the car. Please don't embarrass me tonight. I stared at it longer than I should have, not because it hurt, but because it didn't surprise me. I looked down at my hoodie, faded gray, slightly loose at the cuffs, the kind of thing you don't think twice about wearing when you're not trying to prove anything to anyone. I almost turned the car around. Almost. But then I remembered how many times I'd already done that in my life, how many rooms I had chosen not to walk into. So I stepped out anyway. The engagement party was exactly what I expected. Soft golden lights, polished glass, conversations that floated just above honesty. Everyone looked like they belonged in a magazine spread about modern success. And then there was me. I felt it immediately, the shift in energy when I walked in. Not loud, but noticeable. My sister saw me first. Her smile came quickly, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You made it," she said, hugging me lightly. Careful, controlled. Her fiancé stood beside her, holding a drink like it was part of his personality. Tall, clean-cut, the kind of man who had practiced his confidence until it became second nature. He looked me up and down, not rudely, just precisely, like he was filing me into a category. "Hey," he said, extending his hand. "Glad you could come." I shook it. His grip was firm, measured. Then he tilted his head slightly, that almost smile forming at the corner of his mouth. "Did you Uber here?" There it was. Light, casual, delivered like a joke, but not really a joke. I nodded. Yeah. That was all I gave him. For a second, something flickered in his eyes. Maybe disappointment, maybe confusion that I didn't play along. Then he smirked and turned away. The night moved on, but I stopped being part of it. I became an observer. I watched how he spoke to people, the slight change in tone depending on who he thought mattered. The way he laughed just a little louder at certain jokes. The way he dropped names like breadcrumbs. I watched my sister, too, how easily she blended into that world, how comfortable she was there. At one point, someone asked what I did. It wasn't even a loaded question, but the pause that followed it was. I felt every eye shift toward me. I smiled slightly. "Work," I said. A few polite laughs. Someone muttered, "Must be nice." And just like that, the conversation moved on. But the damage lingered. Later in the evening, it got worse. One of his friends, already a few drinks, and clapped a hand on my shoulder. "So you're the mysterious sibling," he said loudly. "We were just trying to figure out what you actually do." More laughter. I glanced at my sister. She didn't stop it, didn't even try. I could have said something, explained, corrected them, but I didn't. Instead, I just smiled again and let them keep guessing. Because in that moment, I realized something. They didn't want the truth. They wanted a version of me that made them feel comfortable, and I had no interest in giving them that anymore. So I stayed quiet, I stayed calm, and I let the night finish exactly the way they expected it to, with me leaving unnoticed. The next morning felt different, not heavier, clearer. The building stood tall against the early light, all glass and steel. Quiet, controlled, nothing like the noise from the night before. I walked in without hesitation. No one questioned me. They never did. The elevator ride was silent, except for the faint hum of motion. I watched the numbers climb, steady and inevitable. When the doors opened, everything slowed down. The boardroom was already set. Chairs aligned perfectly, screens glowing softly. The kind of room where decisions didn't just affect people, they defined them. I took my seat at the head of the table. Not rushed, not dramatic, just natural. People began to filter in. Nods, greetings, familiar faces. And then he walked in. Same suit, same posture, same confidence. For about 2 seconds, that's how long it took, his eyes landed on me and everything changed. It was an immediate panic. Not yet. First came confusion, then recognition, then something deeper, something colder. He stopped walking just slightly, but enough. The room didn't notice. I did. I held his gaze. Not aggressively, not smugly, just steady. "Good morning," I said, my voice calm, measured. He didn't respond right away. He just stared, trying to rearrange reality in his head, trying to make it make sense. My sister walked in a few seconds later. She saw me, and I watched the exact moment her expression broke. Not publicly, just enough. She hadn't known. Of course she hadn't. I never told her. No one in that room had ever asked the right questions, so I never gave the answers. The meeting began, and he had to sit there across from me, listening, processing. Every word I said carried a weight he hadn't prepared for, not because I raised my voice, but because I didn't need to. At one point, he tried to speak, his voice almost steady. Almost. I let him finish. Then I leaned back slightly, took a breath, and said, "It's important to understand the full picture before making assumptions." Silence. No one else reacted, but he did. I saw it. That moment when the memory of last night collided with the reality of now. The smirk, the question, "Did you Uber here?" I didn't need to bring it up directly. It was already sitting between us, loud enough. The rest of the meeting passed like that, controlled, precise, and when it ended, people gathered their things, conversations picking up again like nothing had happened. But something had. He approached me slowly, carefully, like he wasn't sure what version of me he was allowed to speak to. "I didn't know," he said. I looked at him, really looked this time, at the confidence that cracked just enough, at the certainty that wasn't so certain anymore. "I know," I said. No anger, no satisfaction, just truth. My sister stood a few steps behind him, silent, waiting, maybe hoping I'd say something more, explain, fix it. But I didn't. Because for the first time in my life, I realized something. Respect that appears after revelation isn't respect, it's adjustment, and I had spent too long being adjusted to. I stood up, buttoned my jacket, and walked past them. Not to prove anything, not to win, but because I finally understood I had never been the one who needed to be seen. They were the ones who chose not to look.